So yeah, I saw Rampage on Friday, and I'm about as confused as the film itself. I've been kind of letting it stew a bit, and as it stands in terms of video game movies, it's entertaining for sure. But I'm gonna be one of those people, and I hate to be, but I think if it was more faithful to the mythology of Rampage, if you could even call it that, it would have just been better. I mean, sorry. Make no mistake, this movie is stupid. And that's not necessarily what the problem is. But it's like the wrong kinds of stupid, as in decisions in what to do with the stupid. Um, it's so confused. Like, right off the bat, George, like, okay, some of his moments with The Rock, uh, their bond, it had its moments, but ultimately, was it worth the change to make the three main monsters be mutated animals? I don't think so. I think if The Rock himself was George, and there was two other animal sanctuary whatever people, and this plot was pretty much exactly the same, like the shrapnel lands and they get infected, and all three of them are treated like characters instead of rooting for an underdog George, kind of King Kong light, versus the other monsters that just end up getting killed. Spoilers, by the way. It would have just been better to see root for the three of them in a way. Rampaging the city. Unless it's American sensibilities, like, but the monsters eat people and cause destruction. We can't root for these. Like, well, be edgy, anti-heroes. I mean, the film certainly didn't shy away from killing some characters and whatnot. So ultimately, I just think the in tried and true tradition of Hollywood changing video game movies mythology and lore, it's consistent in the fact that it was for the worse. Making the main three monsters be animals that get mutated rather than people and stuff wasn't it just made some of the monsters, while cool with their abilities, come off as kind of just bland. They could have all. I would have loved to see Ralph, having the gliding and all that, but have a humanoid stance and, be a human character that we follow throughout the film. Same with Lizzie. Could have been, a female character, and yeah. I mean, as it stands, the changes to make them animals made the film come off more like a very polished sci-fi original movie rather than what I would have preferred, a polished Full Moon movie. Full Moon Entertainment, they were like the Citizen Kane of B movies in the 90s, and at least in my view. So being in that sort of guilty pleasure, a portrayal would be more vastly preferred to this one, which, it delivers the Rampage goods at the end, but ultimately its execution and decisions in the plot made it, like I said, come off more like a polished sci-fi original movie, unfortunately. If not for The Rock, who, as usual, his charisma and presence, elevated it. But at the same time, yeah. On top of making the monsters normal animals at first, what's compounded with the problem is that the monsters, more or less, with a few exceptions with George and his comical moments, the monsters are portrayed almost straight, like too straight, while the human characters are as goofy and cheesy and stupid as they come. So it really clashes, like all or nothing, like go in one direction, hardcore parody. Like Rampage just should have been a parody, more or less, and it would have been better for it. Just playing the monsters off like horror movie at time, like Ralph stalking the soldiers. Like, yeah, that was kind of cool, but it clashes horribly with some of the other moments with the human characters, and especially those two human villains are so over the top. Especially the male one, his acting was just so cringe. I mean, if only everything was cringe, it could have made it more charming, but he ends up sticking out rather than complimenting the big picture. And yeah, I just think overall it's a guilty pleasure for sure. It's a film to watch with a friend or a group, but yeah, it's a stupid, entertaining, silly movie. But it could have been a really much more memorable, stupid, silly Ran movie if they went more like the games, and it could have been you know in a time when kaiju seems to be making a big comeback, especially in America. Rampage could have really stood out if the three main, monsters were human at first. And hell, I mean, even retaining their human intelligence in their monster forms could have lent to some awesome interactions while they were rampaging through the city, instead of just the visual spectacle, but just monsters being more like, as cool as Lizzie and Ralph looked, they were no different than the kaiju in the Pacific Rim, just big bads to be put stopped. So yeah, that's overall my feeling on Rampage. On some fronts it delivers a silly thrill ride, guilty pleasure, but as someone that's passionate about monsters, I wish they were more faithful with the monsters, and I think the film would have been better for it. So yeah, it's not a complete train wreck that most video game movies are, but it could have been better. I would give it an average guilty pleasure good time.